Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to share on this topic, the billion-dollar game plan for Southeast Asia. Now, before we go into the topic proper, I thought we should know, or I should introduce you a little to what Vertex Ventures is. We are a network of funds, separately and independently managed across a few geographies, primarily IT-focused, but we have 2 global funds in the healthcare and growth stage. The logos below are some of the examples of companies that the Southeast Asia team has been privileged in investing into. Now, the billion-dollar questions. We have to take a look at the region that we live in, and that is ASEAN. So, what are some of the news that have been hitting our headlines? Not surprising, trade tensions, trade wars, thereby affecting us. Why? Because we are primarily export-driven. So, GDP is looked to be dipping below 5%. Does that mean that it is going to be really gloomy days for us ahead? Well, not really, because again, if we were to take stock of ASEAN as a region, what are some of the strengths that we have, potential that we have, and thereby spelling billion-dollar opportunities we have? To start with, we are the 6th largest economy in the world. And even though our GDP may be dipping below 5%, it is still on an upward trajectory pace. Hence, we are likely to overtake some of the larger economies in the world within the next 10 years or so, thereby bringing us above number 6. Next, McKinsey has done a study that shows that there will be a doubling in terms of households with annual purchasing power exceeding US $7,500. And we know when we have got a better purchasing power, what do? We have aspirations. Aspirations where? In education, ensuring we pursue knowledge, in lifestyle choices, some traveling local as it may be, in better healthcare, in looking at things where we can become employable, and talent being one of them. So again, these are opportunities. When we look at our people, ASEAN actually is the 3rd most populous region in the world. We have an extremely young population. More than 50% of us are under 30 years old. I'm sure that applies in this hall as well. We are a region that has got very young mummies, 35 million and counting, with very young children. And with total fertility rate of 2.3, which is higher than that of China, within the next 5 years, ASEAN is going to have more babies than China. And you know, parents do not spare monies when it comes to spending on their children. So therein lies opportunity. We have Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Philippines. 4 countries with 4 big populations where people are spending more than 4 hours a day on their internet devices, thereby contributing to the top 10 most technically or most digitally involved countries in the world. And there you go, another opportunity where we can reach people via the social media. Now, we mentioned about the demographics and how we have got a whole host of children or youths or millennials, 30 years and under. So we should look at some of the characteristics of this group of people. The millennials, they must have their internet connectivity, right? So this is one of the characteristics that they have. Next, they are spenders. They live for the now, they live for the experiences, they live for causes that speaks to them, and they are willing to spend to support those causes. They don't really believe in savings, at least not yet. Where do they spend on? They spend on entertainment, on fashion, on gadgets. While this is a study done out of India, I believe that the proportion of spend or share of wallet will be applicable to Southeast Asia or ASEAN. Next, they depend a lot on what other people say. They feel strongly for influencers who share same perspective, same values, same truths like them. And so influencers speak more to them than brands or celebrities do. They believe in costs. One of the costs is transparency. I'm willing to spend, but please don't make me feel like I'm being ripped off. So transparency is of great importance to this group of people who are strong spenders potentially. And so when we look at opportunities, we should bear in mind some of the characteristics of values of our millennials. Next, we look at companies that support organizations that provide goods and services to our millennials and to us. And these are, for example, Everlane, the last company I showed. So we can scratch off Walmart and put Everlane on it, and we will still have companies or industry partners that will support Everlane. And who are some of these companies that are supporting or partners of Everlane or of your companies going forward? They are primarily the small, medium enterprises in the local countries and local settings. And we know fears spell opportunity. We have many SMEs. They form the backbone of our economies. They hire many people. But yet, there are things that keeps us or keeps the CEOs of SMEs awake at night. In this digital journey, what are some of the key things that worries them? Whatever that worries them, opportunity. Just bear that in mind. So I have listed here from a study that was done in Malaysia, things that worry them. Some of the solutions that can be solved or can be applied, but there are still many more. PwC conducted another study involving about 1,000 CEOs. On a global level, they were asking CEOs, what exactly are you most worried about? So on the top, you will see the responses from CEOs located in Asia Pacific. They have trade conflicts, protectionism, and availability of talent, which was mentioned earlier on, talent. And when it came to asking the same questions to SMEs, it turned out that other than the fear of talent and digitization and financing, it was the issue of collecting monies. So cash flow being king. When they are able to better manage cash flow, there is also a study done which shows that once they are able to manage cash flow, they can actually see a 4-time bump up in terms of their revenue. So again, solutions to address the financing need. A separate survey that was done to ask CEOs, what are some of the internal issues that you are worried about? Again, talent and succession planning came up tops. The next thing that came in was nothing that should surprise you, and that is on business model innovation, of course, right? So what are some of the business models that corporates should consider, and where do you then categorize business models? Thanks to BCG, I love their 2x2s, we should focus on the sector called the Mavericks, right? Of course, because they not only transform the core, hence gives a lot of discomfort to existing corporate leaders, but yet they are also gunning for the moon when it comes to revenue growth. So we will look at it from these 4 aspects: lifestyle, food, mobility, and co-living. Nothing new under the sun, so says a very wise man. And indeed, that is true. Like I mentioned earlier on, pursuit of knowledge, nothing new. All of us desire to have more knowledge. Popular, for those who grew up in this region, used to be a household brand where they are known for one thing and one thing only, and that is assessment books, right? And they actually had so many of us through 2 or 3 generations of devoted consumers, but they failed to exploit our data, failed to have insights into where my weakness is, and therefore they have been delisted from the stock market. And guess who has taken over this pursuit of knowledge games? New internet players. And you will see that VIP Kids actually is not doing anything very new. They were merely exploiting what technology has for them by linking the native speakers with children, providing them with links to better their spoken English. And how much are they worth now? More than $3 billion. So it's sad that when they stop innovating, Popular has stepped back from the game. Will they be around for the next 10, 20 years? I am not sure, but for sure, they are going to be history. Next, relationships. Relationships, we are human beings, we are social creatures, we depend on friends, and we trust our friends. So previously, my corner shopkeeper would know what I like. How can we bring that into the digital world where the millennials are having so much conversations? So one of the companies that have done extremely well is a company we are involved in, the Asian Parent. Not only do they have 25 million parents on the platform, they have a very strong community of about 2 million parents who constantly check in with each other. Example, they can post the questions. What kind of snacks, what kind of snacks should I give my child if they do not like vegetables and fruits? A parent whom I've blanked out will respond, and they will give their suggestions. And do you know what will happen? The parents who post the question will be keen to try. So therefore, there's high levels of trust. Now, if this community were to shift into doing commerce, you can imagine the potential that lies within this community. And could it become a billion-dollar company? It's for us to imagine. Impossible Burger. How many of us have tasted this burger? It's good, right? And it is actually a maverick in its own kind, where it has opened up a new market, attracting vegans, vegetarians, and millennials who believe in say no to meat, and this becomes their clients, right? When I think about delivery apps separately, I feel that this is a very red ocean, and we should try not to invest into any more companies that's looking at food delivery. However, where then is the opportunity? The opportunity will be in the cloud kitchen space, in the central kitchen spaces, where in the end, my experience with the central kitchen will only be fulfilled by the food delivery apps companies. And so I look forward to having more central kitchen experiences, and that will probably again shape the business going forward, especially given that millennials eat out at least 3 times a week, right? And they are probably less keen to cook. Now, then food companies are also very keen to know what is the next food that we should promote. How many of us have had our salted egg yolks, ... Salted egg yolk fish skin, salted egg yolk curry puff, salted egg yolk egg tarts, I don't know, you name it. And we are getting a little bit jaded and tired of salted egg yolks. So what then is the next big thing that is likely to hit the market? So AI Palette, another Singapore company, has discovered that there is a trend coming up, and that is there's going to be an interest in beetroot, in taro. So when you start having beetroot and taro, please remember I mentioned that to you first. And then food automation, kitchen automation. Given that talent is going to be scarce and people are unlikely to want to work in hot kitchens, doing the same thing over and over again, then where does robots come in? You know Zoom, they have raised over $350 million doing nothing but making pizzas. Will that be a trend going forward for Southeast Asia where labor cost is still not as high, but you will still have people who do not want to turn up for work? Hence, maybe we should consider automation. So Crown Coffee actually has a robotic barista. It's quite an experience to see the coffee that comes out of it, and it will probably speak to us if we want precision in our coffee. I just want 70% coffee and 21% milk and 10% sugar, whatever. They will be able to create that for us. Finally, next, on the co-living space, again, my sense is Airbnb actually broke out of the norm. They were the mavericks. Everything after that was kind of incremental, if you agree with me. And I apologize to all those companies who are doing everything else. So from co-living, so from Airbnb to co-living, it speaks again to the millennials of having short-term employment in different places, of having discoveries in the north region, in the south region, without owning anything. Remember the characteristics of the millennials. They spend, they don't save. They discover, they don't like to have the same experience over and over again. So co-living speaks to them. And then after that, you have got co-working. And there's so many co-working spaces. After a while, it becomes kind of like unable for us to kind of tell each other apart. So, and yet people are still going to co-working spaces. You wonder why. And of course, there's also the other things about having a share in terms of a big building, in terms of a house, right? The equity crowdfunding model. So all this can appeal to the millennials who eventually decide that I would like to start saving. Price of houses are too high, so let me own a small piece of a house, right? So those are all possible trends. And finally, mobility. There's a lot of investment that has gone into the last mile. 4 wheels, 2 wheels, as well as the mapping capabilities, and also the technologies that go into the dashboards of the car. But one thing I will say, when regulators start to regulate you, that's when you know you have become a maverick. So you know Grab and Uber, when the regulators started imposing different things, that's when you know you have arrived. And I understand that in Malaysia, we may have less Grab going forward. So please speak up for the Grab drivers if you do not want to compromise your experience of moving between places. Now, so other than Grab, I also noticed that there are other companies that are coming up doing almost exactly the same thing like Grab, and they have raised quite a sizable amount of money. In my humble opinion, I think it's very noble of them, but I wonder why. Why do they want to fight a giant in the same way? Now, if you think about Grab, how did they transform themselves from being a David fighting against Goliath into a giant today? What did they do? They found out that there were actually inefficiencies within the taxi economy. And they went at it with all their might. And so now they are Grab. So Grab being Grab, are there inefficiencies in their business right now? I'm sure you have an answer. So the question for you is, what is the next billion-dollar item or idea that can come out from the inefficiencies of Grab? If it is not a billion-dollar company idea, what about providing a solution that will help Grab in terms of its expansion to become the super app on our phones? So if you happen to be in the pathway of Grab, don't you think that Grab will then acquire you, and you can then have bragging rights to say, you know, I have the foresight to be in the path of a billion-dollar company, right? So in summary, as a recap, are there opportunities in this region? For sure there is, given that our GDP is growing. We will overtake some of the more mature economies, and when GDP improves, that means we have got propensity to spend. Our region, primarily young people who have a very different way of consuming, very different way of engagement. They're prepared to spend for what they believe in. Finally, for our SMEs and corporates, what are some of the inefficiencies within the organizations, within the business network that seeks or that is waiting to be transformed or disrupted? All this will spell opportunities for billion-dollar cases. But if worse come to worse, continue to develop whatever you are developing. Just make sure you're smart enough to be in the pathway of the billion-dollar companies and be acquired. So are there opportunities? For sure there are. So let's continue to hunt for them. Thank you.